of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tristero. Chapter 94. May cooler heads prevail. Helping the three eavesdroppers to their feet, Shouta chuckled, wiped at his eyes, and asked them to keep the information shush until they all went downstairs where he'd accepted the ring from his, dear God, fiancé in full view of their community. So this is what you wanted to talk to us in the smalls about, hmm? You've not forgotten about the bulldozers, right, Toshiji? Or I guess we're gonna have to start calling you Dad right now, aren't we? He also wanted to give David a little space, for regardless of his initial anger, he couldn't help the sympathy nibbling on his psyche. This was a situation that had escalated very quickly, and although the billionaire had pushed his buttons, he could see that the other hadn't acted out of pure self-interest, jealousy, he was sure, and the fear of losing someone he was close to, of course. Old flames, from what he understood, were always difficult to forget. Or malice. And even though the words David had said hurt, even though he tried quite actively to undermine how he felt about his partner and make him doubt his place at the blonde's side, he could forgive such things. For upon reflection, the emotional atmosphere having been thoroughly disrupted thanks to their gate crashes, he could see that these were the actions of someone grasping at straws, of someone who thought their heart had been in the right place. Though there was only one thing to do now, wasn't there? If he was going to help these men salvage their friendship to the point where they could all move past today, then they needed to talk, didn't they? If for no one else's sake, then for that little girl so obliviously enjoying herself downstairs. He could hear the tots' combined laughter from there, and so...
Guys, could you go wait for us in the cat maintenance room, please?
He asked the teens and the R-rated hero, all of them pausing their animated questioning of a fumbling, smiling, blushing Toshinari, the four of them turning to him and then shifting their gazes to where the American was still sat, his expression crestfallen.
Sure,
Dabi replied, whilst his hands gestured at his fellow listeners who nodded and returned to the door with him. However, before he left, the 18-year-old regarded him over his shoulder. When his dark eyes met turquoise from across the room, the teen mouthed, "Coffee," to which he sent him a fun smile and a little bow of thanks. Such a good kid. I think I should be on my way as well. At the sound of the door clicking shut, the eatery owner sucked in a breath, released it, and inclined his head towards the brunette, whilst the powerhouse, now subdued and guilty-looking, at his shoulder also sighed. Regarding him gently, he then secured one of those warm, strong hands and led him back to the kotatsu table.
Mr. Shield,
he began while sinking down to kneel across from him, his lever moving to mimic his pose.
If you would, I'd like for you to stay a little longer.
What? So you can rub your happiness in my face? The other cut in, his voice raw.
I can see why you'd think that.
He offered, his tone of patience.
However, I would much rather us talk. I think we need to.
I don't need or want your pity either. The inventor huffed, his arms crossing, whilst Toshinori fidgeted, the little red box now cupped reverently in his hands.
Well, it's a good job I'm not trying to give you that then, is it?
He returned, those cobalt eyes looking to him and narrowing in consideration.
This afternoon has been intense,
he admitted.
And incredibly unexpected on all fronts. I think that's fair to say. He mused, and regardless of anything else, you and I share one very important thing in common, don't we?
Watching as the other blinked, they both turned to the caped pro, who looked on, the swell of emotions that had gushed up and over them in the relative quiet of his apartment not even 10 minutes ago, now subdued and fizzling out. He looked just as stricken.
You came here to stop him from making a mistake, right?
He heard himself ask.
Since he considers you to be one of his best friends, he no doubt told you about his intentions. About him wanting to propose, yes?
He pushed, the other huffing, a talented hand moving up to swipe at his eyes from underneath the lenses of his glasses.
That must have been very overwhelming for you. You must have been worried, especially since you don't know me. Then there is the matter of your shared history, of the deeper connection you once shared. Trying to let go of that can't be easy.
He considered, the other letting out a strained chuckle. Don't talk as if you know, the American bit out. I was forced to give him up. I never wanted him to leave, and now finally, there was a chance for us to be together, and you... Oh, what's the point? He ground out, his form deflating. You have no idea what it's like. You can't understand how I feel what you've taken away from me.
With respect, Mr. Shield, I don't want to take what you currently have away from you,
he said, his shoulders shrugging lightly as the other balked.
For whatever reason. You and Toshinori could no longer be lovers, and I feel for you, I do. But there's no need to walk away from him as your friend. That'd be illogical,
he furthered. Then the brunette, letting out a louder laugh, shook his head ruefully. Are you for real? He asked, his words incredulous and gaze snapping towards the symbol of peace who rounded him. Oh, dear God, you're serious. He balked, more shocked laughter leaving him. What are you? Some kind of saint?
The local games call me Jesus, if you can believe it.
He grinned, a little snicker leaving him.
And besides, I'm not the jealous type, and Toshinori is his own man.
He added, the body kneeling so close to him, stiffening a little.
He wouldn't have proposed to me if he didn't mean it, and he'd never betray my trust.
He smiled, his tone fond, when the blonde let out a shuddering breath full of relief, those neon blue eyes moving to his adoringly before they both returned to the blinking brunette.
I know that it must be painful for you to see him moving on, but him moving on doesn't mean that you or your lovely little girl have to be left behind,
he affirmed, whilst David shelved before, with a sigh, those red-rimmed eyes locked with him. Oh, so it's that simple, is it? I came here today with everything all figured out, you know. I'd appear, we'd talk, he'd realize that I was right, that we'd both been wasting time, that we should try again, that Melissa and I were the family he was seeking, not you in this place, he told them, his deflated form straightening a touch. I guess that when he's talked to me about you, Mr. Aizawa, I just kept telling myself that it was simple infatuation, a dalliance, a fling, and with you being, what, 25, 26?
I'm 23, actually.
You see, I couldn't believe it when I thought that you'd want to make such a commitment at this stage of your life. Most people your age aren't prone to such things, and being all might, you can understand that I thought that I was sure you were just the... forgive me. I don't mean to sound patronizing, and Lord knows I've caused enough offense, but you're a great deal older than your years, you know? He attempted to grin through another disbelieving headshake. So it appears that I owe you both a further apology, huh? I mean, Toshi, I thought your puppyish enthusiasm was just that, and when he kept telling me about this place, the people in it, I believed that you were exaggerating. He admitted, the harsh lines of grief across his face softening a touch when they shared a glance. Yeah, he can be prone to such things, can't he?
Yes, he can. It's one of his most endearing qualities,
he replied, whilst the blonde balked, a laugh rumbling through his chest.
I don't know what either of you are talking about.
The most powerful of their gathering tried to chuckle, the tension in the room fading little by little, fraction by fraction, all of their postures relaxing a little as David reached for his lemonade and took a hefty drag, a doleful breath leaving him whilst he placed the glass back down. God, I'm such a fool, and a stupid, jealous idiot besides. They should dock my IQ in Mensa, shouldn't they? Shit. He sighed. Who am I to accuse you of doing stupid things and being shallow when I've come storming over here, I've been divorced for just over a year. I could have flown to Japan straight away, and I just always thought that he'd be here waiting for me, which was wrong. So very wrong of me, he stated, his brows furrowing. Then here I am, Mr. High Mighty, stomping in, telling you that I'm the one who knows best, only to be schooled by someone 10 years my junior, who's handled me and my stupidity with more class and grace than I know what to do with. He huffed incredulously, their eyes liking once more. And for what precious little it's worth. I'm sorry for underestimating you. You're really something else, you know?
Hey, I'm just a small business owner and cook by trade, Mr. Shield,
he replied with a little shrug.
And I'd like to be your friend, to give it some time.
He furthered, his right hand moving to rest atop Toshinori's, the prose form leaning into him, the mouth which was about to admonish him for self-depreciation closing.
You're one of his most precious people, and I would very much want you and Melissa, was it? To know that you're welcome here, alright?
It's very kind of you, Mr. Aizawa Shouta, if I may. It's more than what I deserve, and that means more than what I can say, really. The older man stated, some life returning to his eyes, a little glint trying to spark there. And you ever want any dirt on this guy, then I'd be more than happy to share.
David, that's no ninja.
But also know that if you hurt him, you'll have to answer to me, alright?
David, that's... Of course.
Shouta replied, his smile true.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Striding purposefully into the cafe, his expression grim and partner at on his heels, Sasaki Mirai nodded at Chizome before scanning the eatery. He'd noted Shield David's car parked outside and slightly seething was now fully on the warpath. He could hardly believe it when Toshinori, definitely distressed, had texted him that the inventor had come by on a surprise visit, and his dislike for the American flaring, he'd stormed from his office and almost bowled into Atsuhiro, his lover instantly alert and his usual bravado lost to the seriousness of the situation, had offered to drive. When the brunette had cautiously inquired as to his ire, he'd slumped in his seat and regaled the man with one of the worst summers of his own sidekick days. The summer that the broken shell of Yagi Toshinori had quietly returned to Musutafu. The summer he'd spent worried sick that the blonde would never regain his true self, because it had been him, more so than Nezo and Gran Torino, who'd sat at his bedside, talked to him, and watched him nurse his heartbreak. A heartbreak that could have ended his career. Potentially more. Miraiji, Atsuji, hi! Blinking, the future seer swiftly shoved the frown he must have been wearing aside as Hitoshi scampered towards them, his arms opening to bestow one of the bravest little boys he knew a hug.
Toshi-kun,
He greeted warmly.
have you seen Toshinori? It's Shouta here.
They're both upstairs with Shield-san.
The child, looking up at him, said.
Dabini said that everything's okay, but
The youth shrugged, his expression worried.
as much as I really like Melissa-chan, I don't want her dad making Shoni and Toshiji sad. Do you know why he's here?
I can take a guess.
He huffed, his eyes narrowing before he gave the tat another squeeze. Atsuhiro, would you? Say no more, my dear. His fellow pro hero and partner grinned as he crouched down to wink at the Toshi. What do you say, my boy? Shall we put on a show for this lovely Melissa girl?
Huh?
Yeah. The 9-year-old readily agreed as he allowed the man to pick him up with one arm, to bracket him on his hip, and walk him towards the study space, whilst he removed and waved about his top hat to the cheers of the regulars. Chivita, Mr. Caprese has arrived to liven up this sunny afternoon. Now, who wants to try out my latest and greatest card trick? Watching as the children swarmed to him excitedly, a blonde child with shimmering blue eyes clapping her hands.
Sir Nine-Eye, is everything okay?
Slanting his eyes to the 20-year-old hero in the making, whose face was a mixture of seriousness and worry, Mirai allowed himself to sigh and nod in the affirmative, a flash of light glinting off his glasses.
It will be, one way or another.
He'd approached the apartment quietly, the sounds of the soft jazz and happy chatter of the community filtering behind him, thanks to the herb-planted covered service hatch. The beige suit-wearer swiftly removed his tanned leather dress shoes and gently pushed on the door that would bring him into the first of 2 living rooms. I was forced to give him up. I never wanted him to leave, and now finally there was a chance for us to be together, and what's the point? You have no idea what it's like. You can't understand how I feel. What you've taken away from me?
With respect, Mr. Shield, I don't want to take what you currently have away from you. For whatever reason, you and Toshinori could no longer be lovers, and I feel for you, I do. But there's no need to walk away from him as your friend. That'd be illogical.
Remaining where he was, none of the 3 English speakers aware of his presence, the future seer grit his teeth, showed his generous spirit, his philosophy that there was good in everyone was going to get him really severely hurt one of these days. He'd said as much to the man, those dark eyes regarding him fondly.
Giving someone a chance to change is worth the risk. I think Atsuhiro would be one of the first people to agree with that, right? But thanks for looking out for me, Mirai. I know you try your best not to show it, but you got a pretty big heart filled with hope yourself, you know.
Huffing to himself quietly at the memory, he still couldn't help his golden eyes sharpening as the conversation he was bearing witness to progressed. Shield Davis was, by most people's standards, a genius, and regardless of his philanthropic works, he'd never trust him. Never again. Not after what he did to Toshinori, and should he be right and the American be merely putting on a show, well, getting the man on the no-fly list would be a relatively simple thing, wouldn't it? But also know that if you hurt him, you'll have to answer to me, all right? And there it was. He could see past that teasing tone. Those weren't necessarily the words of someone standing in his best friend's corner. No, they were the words of a man looking for an opportunity.
David, don't! Of course, I wouldn't expect anything less.
Shouta. Huffing, he finally made his presence known with a light cough, his bamboo sock-covered feet ghosting along the floor until he was leaning against the archway, the three speakers turning towards him as he attempted to smile.
Shield,
he greeted, cobalt meeting gold.
how nice to see you again.
He furthered when the brunette similarly grinned at him.
Mr. Sasaki,
He replied, It's been a long time.
Not quite long enough, perhaps.
He mused lightly before humming.
Pardon the intrusion.
He directed at Toshinori and Shouta.
However, since Shield has been booked onto a flight for later this evening, with 3 tickets no less, I thought it was better to stop by now, to say hello.
He furthered, his tone lacquered by a reserved haughtiness he mainly used when interrogating villains.
How very nice of you, Mr. Sasaki.
David breathed before pulling himself to a stand.
And thank you for checking in.
He added, the cocky swagger he was expecting not truly there. No, he actually looked a little cowed. Remorseful wasn't right. However, when he regarded Shouta, there was consideration in his gaze. And a kind of resignation.
Don't think of his level head and rational outlook as anything other than that, though.
He heard himself warn, his arms holding as the blonde got up, his hands offered to the eatery owner who took them.
All that his compassion is something to be exploited. God, if it wasn't for his love of Toshinori, this conversation would have gone very differently. He always put the people he cares about first, and heaven help you should you ever try to demean that,
he added when the inventor upped.
You always know just what to say, Sonata.
The American quipped before the bronzed pro could say anything, whilst the eraser quirk user remained, as ever, completely composed and willing to let him talk without interruption.
Consider me warned off, all right? You've never liked us staying in touch.
David,
The sun-kissed pro tried.
but there's no need to dredge up the past anymore. We're trying to resolve this, and I don't want any more bad feelings. There's been enough hurt here today, and I love all of you, just in different ways, and I can't bear the thought of hurting any of you.
But that can't be avoided, Toshi. This is why I advised a clean break from him.
He stated as the caped pro sighed, his expression fraught once more, whilst the interloper frowned, his arms crossed once again.
How you could ever trust him after what happened is beyond me, but that's my hang-up. You've always been the best of us, despite the mess he made of you.
He admitted, his brows furrowing as he glared at the brunette coldly.
Just to give you fair warning, Shield. Whereas this is his life, and I'm not his parent, seeing him suffer is a torture I wouldn't wish upon anyone. Not even you, although you thoroughly deserve it. You can't tell me that Sally Ann looking so much like him was a mistake, or the result of you having a type.
He breathed.
But he's happy now. Happier than I've ever seen him, and the love he shares with Shouta is their business. No one else's.
He said, his tone clipped and frowned deep.
Try to get in the way of that again, and you'll find me there waiting for you.
He huffed.
Mirai, please.
Shifting his gaze to their symbol of peace, he inclined his head not in apology but acquiescence.
I've said my piece. I needed to for my sanity, because the pair of you was too big-hearted for your own good, and he knows it.
He admitted in their mother tongue before regarding the youngest of the number.
Sure. Please believe me, I don't mean to overstep or butt in. That's the last thing I want you to think, especially since this is your home, your relationship, and I...
Ha! He broke off when the other hugged him, his expression fond.
Let's let's all agree that we've reached a turning point.
The Raven Airman said to them all in a near-perfect English, his expression returning to that pleasant, affable look that was reassuring to anyone he spoke to when trying to help them. You couldn't blame him for adopting that calm, certain demeanor, though. It was clear to any idiot who'd look upon him and Toshinori together that they were deeply in love, wasn't it? Plus, this was the first time he'd met David, which meant he couldn't know the kind of person that lurked beneath that placid demeanor, that almost serene showbiz persona he'd perfected over the years to impress the media, investors, and stakeholders of his company, making him look sincere, caring, harmless.
Now, come on. I don't know about any of you, but I need coffee and cake.
He chuckled.
That, and I'm pretty sure Nomori will physically combust if we don't get down there and make a certain announcement soon, right?